Hello, welcome back to OfficiallyCristie. Today we begin a new book. This is called the Victorian Voice, Stories of Experience, Strength and Hope, Journeys of Recovery from Alcoholism, Victoria, Australia. The following stories are historical stories of recovery from a Victorian publication. They are shared here for archival and educational purposes to ensure these messages of hope continue to help others. All names have been removed to respect the tradition of anonymity. Forward. Soon after coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, I got a copy of the big book. The first section seemed to be written in some kind of secret language that was difficult for me to understand or make any sense of. I flipped to the back and started reading, or should I say devouring, the stories. I identified with every one of them. Some I identified with the day-to-day experiences. Others I identified more with the emotional despair and hopelessness of drinking. I found them enormously comforting. Yes, there were others like me. Without my evening drinking activity, I was crawling into bed with the big book almost every night and reading the stories until I fell asleep. I felt some hope that I too could recover. When I was about 90 days sober, I was asked to share at a meeting. I still attend regularly. Bill S. from Central Office approached me at the end of the meeting and suggested that I write my story and submit it to Central Office for the news. There's nothing remarkable about my story. I had no intention of doing that. I had heard, however, about the value and importance of doing service work, the idea of giving away what we have to keep. It is at the same meeting that I'd been inspired and warmed by Taxi Ted's share. Wow, what a story. A man with a list of criminal convictions as long as your arm, jail time, a man who drunk metho, who turned his life around and became a happy and healthy man, a respectable citizen, so to speak. In many early meetings I attended, I loved hearing the old-timers, not only their experience, strength and hope. I loved the honesty and humility with which these people spoke about their past and their present lives. It was also fascinating by the fact that these stories are individual time capsules. I was fascinated by the colourful names which alluded to times gone by. Gelignite Jack, Jackhammer Jim, Dandy Jean, and Cemetery Ray, to name a few. I was aware of some of these treasured old-timers are also advanced in years, and that while their stories become a part of AA folklore and are passed on by their sponsees, we would lose parts of these wonderfully rich and valuable oral histories. Sadly, two people who were keen to share their stories, Pizza Bill and Gelignite Jack, became unwell and were unable to share for this book. Sadly, both have since passed away. Bill's wife Jeanette has made a contribution to this book. Ted F. and Spitfire Jim had also passed away since this recording of these stories. A loss, but they remain to continually inspire us all. So, in the early days of sobriety, I felt that I didn't have much to offer, but I'd done a bit of writing in the past. I approached Central Office with a seed of an idea about writing the stories of some of our old-timers. How wonderful it would be to have our own version of the back of the big book. For me, a local Australian stories would be so much closer to the heart than the American stories. Angie at Central Office was immediately enthusiastic and the idea of the Victorian Voice was born. But only 3 months sober, I initially started with just one story. Gently, gently. While I was keen on the project, I was advised by my sponsor and Angie just to take it one at a time and not do too many things at once, which might put my sobriety at risk. Angie suggested some members who would be willing to share their stories in detail, and I approached them. I heard shares at meetings. I commenced visiting people in their homes, generally, and type a rough draft of their story as they relayed it and then give it to the person as a draft, and we worked from there. The process had been warm and rich and rewarding for me. I loved the time capsules and the anecdotes of the times of past, the 6 o'clock swills of the men's lodge and the secret back doors of after-hours drinking, of lives at the waterfront, in the war, on the railways, and when men roamed the country on shearing camps, of SP bookies, and when women who drank, they did so in ladies' lounges. Each person shared generously and openly, much of which is included in these stories, in order to help others in the fellowship, including newcomers like myself. How many newcomers are fortunate enough to hear these stories in full? I had no idea how good it would be for me, and my sobriety. It's given me a great foundation. I feel very privileged to have spent time and listened to each of these sober alcoholics. I encourage anyone who is new around to spend individual time with an old-timer, to hear their whole story and soak in the message and the experience, strength and hope. Take a risk and ask an old-timer to tell you their story in detail. Spend an hour, an afternoon. These old-timers are our treasure. I thank each of them for their efforts and their contributions of time and sharing their experience, strength and hope. I only regret it's about how many stories I have not recorded. For every remarkable story here, there are tenfold more at every meeting, every day. I'd like to think that at some time in the future, a newcomer may curl up in bed and take the inspiration from these stories as I did. I hope you feel and enjoy the experience, strength and hope of these stories. Jenny H., February 2013. Well, I'd like to personally thank Jenny for writing this book, because in my sobriety journey, it's become an absolute cornerstone of my purpose, is to get the message out to other alcoholics who need it. So if you like this story, don't forget to share it or just listen to it with someone. Thanks.